It is my pleasure to introduce to you Christine Howieson for this next session. She's going to be giving you an inside look into Simply Classical readiness levels A, B, and C. Christine has 3 children, ages 7 to 11. Her family has been homeschooling for 6 years, 5 of which have been with Memoria Press. She says, after some difficulty teaching the oldest to read, I found Simply Classical, and after 5 years of using Memoria Press, I have now taught from and completed all levels of Simply Classical, with the exception of the newly released levels 7 and 8. A fun fact about Christine is that in her earlier pre-kid life, Christine worked on an aircraft carrier, scheduling trips and events, sporting activities, and port visit tours while in port and deployed with the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Please welcome Christine.
Hello, how's everybody doing today? So as Cheryl said, I have been with Memoria Press for the last 5 full years. And I guess I made a little mistake in my bio because I found an old picture. Oops, not that one. This was our first year using Memoria Press. And my oldest is actually holding the kindergarten curriculum. And my youngest is holding level A. And my middle son is holding level B. And so I had forgotten that I had the younger 2 in Simply Classical, although at the time I didn't necessarily have them in those levels because I suspected any kind of learning challenges. I actually, in level B, there are those little rod and staff counting and coloring books, and I found a way that they were already scheduled. And we had tried using Montessori the year before, and it was becoming much more work than I was able to keep up with. Also, a good state of what my home looked like before we came to Memoria Press was this was pretty much a typical day in my house with a 2- and 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And we just were feeling very disorganized, and I really needed a good plan for moving forward because I was feeling overwhelmed and feeling like we weren't making any kind of progress. So my youngest used level A more as kind of a bedtime thing. She was getting into a lot of things, but actually, as it turns out, I mean, she's almost 7 now, and we have had to use Simply Classical for her to teach her to read. And in fact, I've had to delay some of her and had to take even longer on some of the skills than I did with my older 2 children. So we'll begin with level A, where it's our first level. It's called Readiness, Rhythm, and Rhyme. And in this particular level, we keep the sessions very brief, but it's the perfect place to begin for little ones who are chronologically 2 or 3, children who have difficulty with expressive language or apraxia of speech, and somewhat older children with intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome who don't mind some younger books. In this level, there's no writing. It's very lap-centered. And so what does that mean? In this level, it uses a series of children's books, and you go through and you read them. One little note, I actually showed you this book. Most of the books in this level are the smaller board books, but this particular book, I actually ordered this from Rainbow Resources, the whole Simply Classical level A instead of Memoria Press, and I got this little book, and you actually need the big book. So I do recommend if you're going to buy this book that you make sure you get the right one. It has a few more pages in it, and in this level, because it's lap-centered, the book itself is what you're going to use to conduct your lessons. So this is our level A book list, and it's just a series of different children's books. There are some supplies that you would need, and they do suggest that right here in your curriculum guide. And I do suggest that once you get this, you go through and find those supplies because it will make doing the the task later a lot easier. But I'll go through one of the lessons for you to see how it works. So I chose week 9, and every day you have a prayer, you have a little bit of a calendar, you have a little mini recitation, there's an alphabet lesson, a number lesson. This tells you what book to use, and then there's always some oral language skills that you'll use with the book. And then there's some fine motor pre-writing skills, gross motor coordination. And the thing that I really liked about this is they, in this level, they do schedule some sort of enrichment type things, but then there's a whole lot of space in case you have your own therapies. And actually at this time I had 2 children in physical therapy. And so we were able to write in some of their homework and things just right here because it was one thing that I would just forget, but it was nice to have this space in the book to be able to do that. So for our model lesson, we're using this book, Hand, Hand, Fingers, Thumb. And so when you're doing this level, even though it is lap centered, you do still want to create some structure within, and you'll want to create an opening and a closing by using what is already laid out in your curriculum guide. So you'll always start with a prayer from this book. And so this one says, I thank thee, Lord. And, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. This is the wrong book. I'm sorry. That was my fault. It's called Prayers for Children, which I have, but I made a mistake and grabbed the wrong one. In the book, there's a lot of little prayers, and you would go through and you'll teach them that prayer. And then you'll go over things like, what day is today? What's the weather like? Getting them to talk. Then you'll teach a recitation, a very short one. Give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. Then it tells you to sing the ABC song. It tells you to be slow through L, M, N, O, and P. We're going to count to 10. Then you're going to read the book. And this particular book is very rhythmic. And so all the things that correspond to all the activities that correspond will go along right with the book. So you're talking about the hand, you're talking about the instruments, you're developing some vocabulary. You're doing some little finger plays, and then you're doing a marching band. My older child really liked to do these activities with my younger daughter, so that made it fun for both of them. And you go through, and there's 4 days of lessons. For some children, they might need to repeat this. This is one of those lessons that maybe you have a child who isn't speaking yet, and so, but their motor skills might be better. And so you might be able to do this lesson with them 1 year, introducing the oral language, but maybe they won't speak the answers to you, but then maybe their language will develop through the year, and you might go through this this whole book again the following year. And that's a perfectly acceptable way to do things. I think I kind of learned the hard way that these guides, these lesson plans they're actually called curriculum guides. And so you really want to use them as a guide. If your child is not progressing, you don't want to move on to the next day. So we want to keep the sessions brief though. And every so often there is a review week where you'll go through and it'll go through the books. Like this week, and you're going to review the books 1, 2, 3 from the last 4 weeks. And so this might be a time where you assess, are we ready to move on to the next book or not? And maybe you might repeat some of the activities, or just teach the part that they're having a little bit more of a hard time with. In each of the curriculum guides, there is an assessment in the front of the book that you want to pay attention to. And that'll tell you if you're in the right level or not. These are also found on the website, so you don't have to wait for the guide to see if this is the right level. You can actually go online to the Simply Classical site, and you'll be able to download these assessments. But an important part not to overlook is they are also assessments that this part is not on the website through cognitive skills and abilities, and you can check whether they have them or they're emerging. And then they give you suggestions for developing those skills. So this might be something that if they're working on something and you don't have any specific therapies, it could be something that you could write down here. So I'm going to take, I can go ahead and take a couple questions for level A now if we need to. Let's see. Does Memoria Press have a supplemental intervention program that could be used in a resource room to support the math and reading levels of an elementary aged student, specifically for dyslexic students? Cheryl, do you want to handle that question? Do you want to delay? How would you like to handle that question?
Let's wait on questions not related to level A, but since we've asked it, we'll go ahead and address this one. But yes, we have a lot of standalone resources that are appropriate for resource room use, such as our Simply Classical Spelling, Simply Classical Writing, our Simply Classical copybooks. All of those things are on the website, and we can help you with that during the Q&A time. And then also you can always email me, Cheryl Swope at memoriapress.com, and we can individualize or personalize those resources for you. But I think in this session, we should stick with our readiness levels of A, B, and C.